Hey, what's going on, everybody out there? This is Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel and welcome to a brand new episode of JJ's One Man Podcast. So, this time we're going to reflect a little bit on 2021 since it's already after the new year at the time I'm recording this. Hopefully, all of you out there had a great New Year's or at least a great start to 2022. 2021 was just a weird year for a lot of different reasons. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was like from the fallout of 2020, a whole bunch of like game releases that were good, as well as also a bunch of other news pieces that were related to gaming and the games industry that just rocked things for one reason or another. It was a really goofy and weird year. Another one post 2022. And I'm not just talking about the pandemic stuff. Like, I feel like everybody's talked about that to death at this point. And not just because YouTube really has like its issues with people even mentioning it and stuff. It's just something that I felt like was around, it kind of lingered and was like over our heads for 2021. But the real crazy stuff for gaming, at least for me in 2021, was a lot of the stories that were just continuing from 2022. As far as news stories, I mean, I'm talking about the stuff obviously with CD Projekt Red, which was a huge deal. A lot of people, I think people understand how much of a big deal that is, but there's a good majority of people that don't really get just how significantly, like, really bad it ended up being for CD Projekt Red. Granted, this was all after Cyberpunk 2077 had its like really botched release. It's a whole cavalcade of like madness that just went down with that game, and it still continues to not only have a bad word of mouth for a lot of people. I mean, the PlayStation 4 version straight up still doesn't work, and they're kind of not really doing anything about it. I feel bad for a lot of people that were really hyped up for it, but also I've kind of like turned my eye a little bit towards a lot of the media and a lot of the influencers that were really hyping up this game and still, even to this day, try to make so many excuses for it. I even said it during my, Game Awards episodes of this podcast, and I talked about it with a few other people on various shows and other stuff that I was on. That game, Cyberpunk 2077, had no business being at the VGAs or the Video Game Awards. It was just insane to me that even got like a nod for anything whatsoever after how bad and how things got at that point. A lot of people tried to justify to me that like, oh, like just because it had like a botched launch and had all these other problems doesn't take away from all the other hard work when it comes to like music, the soundtrack, and all these other things. And I'm like, no, in all honesty, like there's no excuse for the way that game turned out and the way that CD Projekt Red went about it. They literally almost lied to not only their investors, but to a lot of other people. The game was just not ready to go and they refused to delay it. So with so many other games that I know of over the years that I've seen a lot of people in the media and a lot of other places really kind of hound on and dogpile on for stuff like this, it was just weird to see a lot of people making excuses for CD Projekt Red even after all this time. Because from my understanding, even the short period of time that I played Cyberpunk, because I played like maybe about 4 or 5 hours of that game, give or take, on PC nonetheless, and I saw a ton of issues. Like, there was stuff in there from the very get-go that I know people that review games would have just completely eviscerated those games had they saw stuff like that. But you didn't really see a ton of that for Cyberpunk 2077. But leading up into 2021, as that really started like the end of 2020, it's still just a botch of a game. It's not what they intended it to be, but also it hasn't really achieved the vision for a lot of people were told about this game over the years. Again, I saw this game at E3. I was at a presentation with CD Projekt Red where I got to see Cyberpunk before it came out, and they were talking a big game, and deservedly so. It was based on a lot of the reputation for CD Projekt Red. But anyway, I'm getting way too much down that rabbit hole. That could be like a whole video in of itself. And I feel like at some point, I want to have a discussion with someone that's also part of the industry to really talk about that stuff, because there's so many things, so many facets and dimensions to everything with Cyberpunk. I want to focus a little bit more back on 2021, because the other big thing, obviously, we have to talk about with 2021 is the stuff that's been going on with Activision and Call of Duty, and really Activision Blizzard as a company, in essence. But I kind of, relate this to my own experience with Call of Duty and just in the aftermath of all the craziness that went down with Activision, like the lawsuits, the accusations, the people getting let go, the crazy stories that you hear about that went down. Like, it's absolutely insane. This has to be one of the worst, if not the worst, public just like outings and public just, eviscerations of a game company that I've ever seen. And there's been others here and there. Obviously, people could turn to like stuff with Randy Pitchford. People could obviously turn to with Ubisoft, which I'll get into in a minute. But with Activision specifically, because of the popularity of franchises like Call of Duty, of Overwatch, of World of Warcraft, Diablo, and all the stuff, that's been reported in the media articles that have been written about Bobby Kotick and other things like that, I feel like this is the one that's got the most spotlight on it, and deservedly so because of how serious some of those things were. But it's just absolutely insane that besides all of that that's going on in the gaming news, there's also the games themselves. Warzone, I play Warzone every once in a while with some friends of mine, just away from the camera, away from YouTube, just to sit down and just play with some of my friends. And Warzone is a mess. In some of the other Call of Duty games, including Vanguard, including Modern Warfare, the remake or the reboot of Modern Warfare, those games are a mess, especially with the online multiplayer. There's a lot of bugs, a lot of glitches, a lot of really weird things that happen in that game between the meshes and the actual models of characters and guns just going haywire and like making it borderline unplayable because like all these like weird like, crazy things break in the game and just completely obscures the screen when you're trying to sit down and play. But also even just some of the crazy things like in Modern Warfare, the game would crash on consoles like multiple times over stupid stuff. And to date, they still haven't even really fixed it. I was watching a video not too long ago on YouTube that was talking about this very thing, and it's just insane how a lot of this is happening because of a lot of the people that are getting let go and a lot of the other stuff that's going on with Activision in the news that involved a lot of QA people. For whatever reason, they had teams of people that were just let go that were involved in QA that were responsible for covering a lot of these bugs up or spotting them and repairing them as the game goes along. And it's a shame because with all this stuff happening, it's just more problems on top of more problems for Activision to deal with. And I got no sympathy for them because, again, for obvious reasons without getting too much into it. But it's a shame for a lot of the players that have been supporting these games, whether it's Overwatch, which is a whole nother can of worms. That's something I'm not even going to get into because that's a whole nother thing that you could do a whole video on. But with a lot of the people that are just playing Call of Duty or even the competitive players, that was another thing that I saw a video about where a lot of the competitive scene is just completely in shambles as well. Like there's nothing going on. There's nothing being done. There's not a lot of opportunities for big Call of Duty competitive players that have been playing the series for a long time and actually being part of the different circuits and really pushing the game out there for this company are kind of just left out in the rain. And that's a damn shame because there's like no game plan. There's no handling of this stuff. And it just continues to pile on with all the different problems that Activision has been going on. And it's nuts. Absolutely freaking nuts. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. I think going in through 2022 into 2023 possibly, things are only going to get worse for that company. Speaking of companies, another one I guess we could talk about, another controversial thing, which a lot of controversial things that were really like in the spotlight of 2021. Like there was game releases, don't get me wrong, I've reviewed some of the games here on this channel, but a lot of crazy things that just went down in 2021 that continue to go down now, including the stuff that's been going on with Quantic Dream. Now, that's a thing that's been going on for years, but really what made it resurge, especially towards the end of 2021, was with Star Wars Eclipse. Now, I haven't really fully talked about Star Wars Eclipse and my feelings on it, other than some of my stuff that I mentioned in my Game Awards video and my post thoughts and my post-mortem and such. With this game, I'm excited about it, even though I know it's in the High Republic. I know that that's not an era of Star Wars that myself and a lot of other people are really kind of resonating with right now. But I know that the games from Quantic Dream are going to be interesting. They're going to focus on characters. They're going to look great, especially if you played Detroit Become Human or even played Heavy Rain. You know exactly what you're in for. And setting that in the Star Wars universe, to me, it sounds like it's going to be super interesting. And that trailer, like a lot of people have been saying, that trailer was pretty hype. It's a cinematic trailer. I know we didn't really get to see gameplay, but it does look freaking hype. However, obviously with the stuff with Quantic Dream that they've been dealing with the back end of stuff, a lot of like the accusations with David Cage and all these other crazy things, it just is another one of those instances where all this other stuff outside of the game is just going to overshadow the game itself. And a lot of people are just not going to be happy about it, or just they're going to be constantly battling each other about it on social media, which I think is stupid. Sometimes that just doesn't really help anything whatsoever. It's just people trying to talk just simply so they could talk and be heard by others. No real purpose beyond that. And with Star Wars Eclipse, I feel like maybe, whenever this game comes out, because this game isn't coming out anytime soon. Don't expect it in 2022, 2023. I don't even think we get it until 2024 or 2025, to be real with you. And I know I saw a report that came out that game is still far off in development because there's been issues behind the scene with hiring different people because of all this other stuff going on. It just seems like a bunch of craziness. So I do hope that whatever it is that needs to get done or gets settled gets fixed up in some way so they could get enough people on that game to finally just like continue it and finish it and get it out as quickly as possible in the high quality that Quantic Dream is known for some of their games. I'm not going to be one of those people that I see on social media that just because they see Quantic Dream, they're just going to automatically just shut things down and stuff. That's not my job. That's not my, I don't have the luxury of doing something like that because I cover a lot of games and I cover a lot of aspects of the games industry. You do have to acknowledge the things that are going on, of course. Like, I'm not going to sit here and ignore the fact that there's a bunch of nonsense going on with Quantic Dream. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I'm just going to automatically just not cover the game or not look into the game itself or just be interested in a new Star Wars game. And here's the funny thing with that. I bring that up to also go back to the stuff I mentioned with Ubisoft, because Ubisoft is going through some stuff too, and they're also making a Star Wars game. There was all that stuff that happened in 2019 and 2020. No, it's 2020 specifically, because when the pandemic really started to kick off. With 2020, that Ubisoft was dealing with a bunch of stuff that a bunch of people got let go. I remember that, and I know a bunch of people that got affected by that. Some people that I straight up cut off after all the stuff that came out about them and all the other nonsense and craziness that was going on as well. But Ubisoft is also developing an open world Star Wars game. And I feel like that type of stuff is going to come up again in some form or fashion. And it's going to be brought up and people are going to be like, oh, even though we've known about Ubisoft making a Star Wars game for so long, because it's Ubisoft, we're not going to support it. It's like, where does the line draw? Like, where do you actually kind of like, acknowledge stuff is going on, but still be able to support or look into some of the games that are coming out? I feel like that's a dilemma that a lot of people find themselves in, mostly because of peer pressure on social media. But for me personally, I'm still going to check out all these games regardless. This isn't in the sense where it's like I have a real personal connection to a lot of like what's going on. Obviously, I can't downplay stuff like that for a lot of people. But as my job is to cover games, as is my duty to look into games and talk about games for all of you, you know damn well I'm going to actually cover all these games eventually when they start coming out. And because of Star Wars, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, I have to look into this stuff. So with all that being said, besides all the nonsense, let's talk about some good stuff in 2021. At least, for me, there were some interesting games. Some people were saying that this was like a meh year for game releases. I think that's only because 2020 and 2019 really had a bunch of different good releases within them. And in comparison, this one was kind of mute compared to that. I mean, last year we got a bunch of great games that were awesome. And this year we did get a few, especially towards the end of the year. I had to go back and look at the release schedule when I was doing my Game Awards actual discussion and talking about what might possibly win Game of the Year and stuff. And looking back at some of the games that came out like earlier in the year, there was a lot that people forgot. There was a lot that people just like did not care about because of all these other shiny new games going on right now. I mean, with all the other like shooters and stuff that came out earlier in the year, once Halo Infinite dropped, nobody gave a damn. Everybody was playing Halo Infinite. And you can even say the same thing about Call of Duty. Call of Duty had a lot of like momentum before all the craziness going on, but once Halo Infinite dropped, that's what everybody was playing. You can even say the same thing with games like Metroid Dread. Like there was other action games and action adventure games that came out towards the earlier half of 2021, but once a big title like that started coming out, then that's the big conversation towards the end of the year. So that's why you're going to see a lot of people, besides the games being good, you're going to see a lot of people talking about that stuff since it's so fresh in their mind. But it was still a decent year. It wasn't terrible. I don't agree with it being that this was a lackluster garbage year of game releases. I still think that we had some good ones. I enjoyed playing through Metroid Dread. I enjoyed playing through Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. I enjoyed a lot of the other retro games that did get re-releases this year, which was nice, including Knights of the Old Republic, which I reviewed not too long ago. I never played that game on the original console, like in full, I should say. I've dabbled with it because of friends, but not like sit down and fully play through it like I did here. And I was grateful for stuff like that. And there was others as well, here and there, and that was fine. And then, of course, for me personally, I played a lot of other retro games. I almost did, I'm pretty sure I hit the number about 50 reviews in 2021. So a review every single week, at least, or close enough to it, because I know there was a couple weeks where I did like a top 5 or I did some other like video throughout the year. But there was a lot of games I got to play and a lot of games I got to finish and talk about, which was great. And that's something for me, even if you remove all the retro stuff, it still at least had a lot of great game releases for us to discuss and look into and to play if I was into them. I mean, look at that. I'm even thinking about it now. New Pokemon Snap was another one. No More Heroes 3, even though I was disappointed about it, I'm glad I got to play it because it was so hyped up and it was something I was looking forward to, but it ended up being a disappointment for me. I still think that a lot of people give that game excuses. They're way too easy on that game for the way that things turned out for it, but I digress. I already talked about all that in my review of No More Heroes 3. You guys could go check that out when you want to here on the channel. So other than that, couple other things I could mention, because this was still a meh year. I didn't travel around as much for obvious reasons, and I don't think that's going to be the case for a long time still, granted with all the stuff going on with the global pandemic. But I will say I got to do a lot more writing and got to do a lot more alternative things that are still relevant to gaming, but just not related specifically to YouTube. Like, for example, I got to do some more writings for Flynn's Arcade's, blog. I've been doing articles and editorials for them every single weekend, which is great because I get to flex my muscles when it comes to writing about stuff, especially games, every single weekend. People get to read it. So if you haven't really checked that out, I'll probably leave a link down below in the description box where you could go see the entire Flynn's Arcade blog. There's new articles in there about arcade games, fighting games, retro stuff, new stuff, Star Wars stuff, a lot of different things, because I love writing about games, especially when I just get to kind of like flex and freestyle with it. It's a lot of fun to me. So if you want some good games running, and if you're tired of all the nonsense that's been going on in other media and other outlets and stuff, definitely go read that stuff if you're a fan of some of my thoughts and my perspective on games. Speaking of which, to go back to some of the nonsense, right? Again, there was so much craziness this year when it came to games. The one big one I think I should also mention and not forget to talk about it is the stuff going on with Kotaku, which has been an ongoing saga for the last couple of years. But this year in particular, there was a lot of instances where not only myself, but a lot of people in the industry, and especially on social media, were kind of fed up with Kotaku. And I kind of like single them out specifically because they're the one outlet, even though every games media outlet had its own like hiccups and ebbs and flows, they're the one outlet that seems like they were the ones that were just going out of their way to get at people, to get a rise out of people, to get a reaction out of people. You saw this with a number of different headlines, which I still think are in poor taste, and the way that they handled them and quote unquote changed them and adjusted things was still in very poor taste. It just felt very rude and obnoxious. And I think people are starting to get really tired of that. A lot of this also comes from the changes that they had with the editor-in-chief, because I know Patricia Hernandez is still the editor-in-chief of Kotaku. A lot of the interviews that she's done after she took that position and some of the actions don't line up for me. This is why I stopped reading a lot of the editorials at Kotaku. And every time I see one come up or I end up going to one, it's usually because of nonsense like this that somebody shares around. It's like, look what this outlet has been doing again. And you can't blame people for feeling like that. I mean, how are you going to come out and make an article or an editorial that's basically just poking fun at developers or people that are working at a studio going to, record gunshots for the next Call of Duty game? Because this was before a lot of the craziness with Activision happened. Some of the people that were working, I believe, was on Black Ops 4 or one of the other Call of Duty games. They went to Europe to go record some of the guns. Or it was either Black Ops 4 or it was Vanguard, that they were recording some of the guns in Europe, and they were doing like different like sound design stuff. And the article was just basically like poking fun at them, saying like, oh, it must be so hard taking a vacation to Europe. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, the entire development community between people that worked over at that studio and a lot of others and some of our colleagues were like, yo, like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? Like, what are you saying? And why are you getting at these people like that? And that's not even to mention, too, some of the other stuff that was kind of stupid with the whole Metroid Dread debacle with them pretty much promoting piracy was stupid. Somebody over there was not doing quality assurance. Some editor over there was not doing their job and just let something go. Or they purposely felt like, oh, we could just, get people talking about this. And it was stupid, especially the day after a game comes out. It just felt very vindictive, too, for a lot of people. Some individuals on videos, even though I think it's nonsense, were saying like, oh, they were probably upset because Nintendo didn't give them a review code for the game. And it's like, I don't necessarily believe that, but I can't blame them for feeling that way in some fashion, because it comes off like that when you read it. There's also some of the other editorials that you've seen on that website with stuff like, the headlines like calling games shit, which I get it. It's an opinion, but you're a professional outlet. You're an actual accredited media outlet that talks about games. You should know better. You should have a better etiquette. I got into arguments with people and debates about whether it's being real or authentic or that I'm calling for censorship and stuff. And it's like, no, that's not the case. It's all about etiquette. It's all about good taste. And it's all about approaching things in a quote unquote professional manner if you're going to put yourself out there or talk about constantly how you're a professional outlet. And that's what Kotaku is technically. I mean, I know a lot of people don't see it as that. And I talked about this in my video addressing stuff when it first came out. But as someone who is a professional, I could tell you, having done work with other outlets, some of the biggest out here, if they put themselves out there are like certain rules and regs that are a lot of which are unspoken that a lot of people follow when it comes to coming off as professional. I mean, you could say what you want about being real, but there's a better way to come out and say that a game is shit and a game that is bad or garbage, especially on first impressions, than just putting that in the headline. It's just in very poor taste. It just feels low. It feels very low for a lot of people. And many other people agreed with me. And a lot of other podcasts I saw talking about the whole thing when it came up in conversation felt the exact same way, that and pretty much were parroting the exact same thing I was saying on social media. But I digress. Again, that's another rabbit hole going down the whole thing when it comes to, talking about games media, talking about gaming journalism, critics, being critical of games and writing about games in general, what's professional and what's not. That's a whole nother conversation for another time. And I feel like that's another topic that I do want to talk about with someone that I know is in the industry at some point, especially this year, because I feel like the conversation should be had. But that's just me. So with that being said, overall, was 2021 a decent year? For gaming news, for game releases, just gaming in general? It was an okay year. It wasn't the best, it wasn't garbage, but it was just okay. I feel like it was one of those intermediate episodes of an anime, like a filler episode, until we get to 2022. And hopefully, God willing, nothing bad happens in 2022. Hopefully we get a lot of good stuff this new year. But anyway, those are just some of my thoughts about 2020 year, the year of gaming, and stuff that I was doing and my opinions on about a lot of different things. Let me know your thoughts about last year. Now I could say that because now we're in the new year. Let me know some of your thoughts about last year down below in the comments section. Tell me some of your favorite games that came out, some of your worst games that came out, your best situations, your worst situations, or things related to gaming in the year of 2021. And don't forget to leave a like on this video, subscribe to my channel as well for all my gaming videos and other episodes of the podcast, just like this one. There's a whole playlist here for you guys to check out. I keep trying to keep everything organized so you guys can find all the content and stuff that's relevant to your interests and other things that I know you're going to really dig. Don't forget to, guys, join my Discord server. There's links down below in the description box. I'll probably put it as the pinned comment as well, where you could join my Discord server and come chat it up with the community. We got over 150 people in the Discord now that are just hanging out, talking games, talking movies, talking Star Wars, talking comics, talking anime, and just having a good time overall. If you want another good spot to enjoy and be part of a community on Discord, come check out my Discord server. You definitely won't be disappointed. That being said, I will talk to all of you again very soon. Peace out. And stay epic, everybody.